Took a lot of notes last night.
You did.
I did. All right, where's my headphones?
Are we going to talk about donuts this time?
Krispy Kreme down in Charlottesville?
Duck donuts.
Duck donuts?
Yes.
What's that?
I told you about duck donuts. You still haven't had any?
I don't know where to find them.
They're all over. They're in Northern Virginia now, too.
I haven't been down there in a while.
So near Bristow Station.
Okay.
I know there's one near Bristow Station.
Well, next time I'm in that area.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, now, either pull yourself or the microphone closer to one or the other. Yeah, okay.
So let's do this.
Yeah, you need to do that.
That better?
Yeah. Hear how clear you are now?
I do.
Yeah, doesn't sound like you're on the other side of the room.
Okay.
Okay, so Eric. Oh, well, go ahead and go live, Eric, if you want.
All right, we're back on one.
Oh, thank you. All right. Before we start, I got to make a habit of doing this, and I keep forgetting. I need to get IDs. So, hi, this is Caroline Janney. You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg. Something like that.
Now?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. Let me.
You are live.
Okay, thank you. Let me mute me and him. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, this is Caroline Janney, and you are live on Addressing Gettysburg.
Say you are listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hi, this is Caroline Janney, and you are listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And today we have an old friend of ours. This is her third time on the show. And last night she gave a lecture at the Fortinbaugh to do. What do they call it?
It's the Fortinbaugh Lecture at
The
Gettysburg.
Fortinbaugh Lecture
Yeah.
at Gettysburg College. John S. Mosby, Rise and Fall of a Confederate Hero, or Lessons from the Judas of the Lost Cause. It's Caroline Janney. Welcome back, Carrie.
Thank you.
It's so nice to have you back on. I love listening to you talk. I don't get to do it enough. You need to come up here more because I never leave Gettysburg. But no, it was a great lecture last night.
Thank you.
And let me just quote Jim Downs here. He called you a force of light and brilliance in the field. I agree. He says you have ebullient enthusiasm. I have to still look up ebullient. And he introduced you as the resplendent and irrepressibly brilliant.
I love Jim Downs.
And you said that you're going to have him introduce you everywhere you go.
I am. I've decided, you know how some famous people have people that carry their umbrellas and whatnot? I'm going to have Jim introduce me.
Your introducer.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. But no, I think he is absolutely correct in all that stuff. You have you just have a very easy way about you when you talk, and I think people really like that. So, okay, you talked about Mosby, and what I love about it is that you started off with the Mosby Heritage area signs,
right?
And now I grew up going to visit my family in Warrenton, Virginia, and it was Mosby this, Mosby that, Mosby everywhere, right? Mosby Highway. It was his office in Warrenton. I knew the name Mosby before I knew who the guy was, right? And now that's all gone.
Right. So it came, well, it went, and then it came, and then it went. I mean, it's really this, as Civil War memory goes, he's a fascinating figure because he was popular and then he was canceled.
Yeah.
In the 19th century. And then he rose to fame again. And since 2020, of course, his name has been disappearing from all sorts of places.
So it's interesting, though, because I guess the reason why his name has been disappearing now is because he was a Confederate.
Right.
But totally disregarding that he really became almost an anti-Confederate in the end.
He did. I mean, in some ways, he and Longstreet, maybe we should take another look at them and reconsider those who rejected much of the lost cause, those who called a spade, that addressed the fact that slavery was at the heart of the war. And instead of completely erasing them from our vernacular or thinking about them And I'm not saying that we need road signs and monuments to him, but as we think about those people who pushed against the lost cause version of the war, maybe we should reconsider some of these figures and not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right. Which we tend to do when we go to extremes.
Yes, we do.
So let's go back. Who was Mosby? How did his life start?
So Mosby is born in Virginia in 1833 to a slaveholding family. Both his paternal and maternal grandparents from Central Virginia and Western Virginia, extensive slaveholding families. He grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia. His family enslaved at least 20 people in 1850. So he's coming from the slaveholding elite. Goes off to UVA at 16 years old to University of Virginia, where he gets in trouble for a lot of different things, including riding his horse too fast through the streets of Charlottesville, but really gets in trouble when he shoots a medical student, George Turpin, in the neck. And he apparently, this, according to him and to other testimony, George Turpin was a bully, but Mosby took a pepper box pistol and went to his boarding house, waited for him, and shot him in the neck. So he's expelled from UVA. And
what was that over?
It was, as 19-year-olds go.
Yeah, not much.
It was over accusations that Mosby had stolen a fiddler that George Turpin wanted to hire for a party. And Mosby had hired him instead.
Oh, my God.
And yes, I mean, it was really, high stakes.
Wow. Can you imagine how embarrassing is that for the medical students? Like, oh, man, what'd you do? How'd you get shot? Oh, I accused him of stealing my fiddler. It's like, how many fiddlers were there about? You could have found somebody else. Apparently, yeah, I guess. So, okay. So he gets shot, he gets expelled. Or he shoots a guy, gets expelled. Does he get in legal trouble?
He does.
Yeah, what happens there?
He's charged with murder. And ultimately...
Oh, he died. The kid died?
I'm sorry. He did not die. He almost died. He's charged with attempted murder.
Okay.
And Mosby will be found guilty of unlawful shooting. But he is to spend a year in jail. He was a very sickly child. Lots of testimony from doctors that he was constantly ill, and so it wasn't clear that he would survive a jail sentence. And then there was a fine on top of that, and if he didn't pay the fine, he would have to stay in jail even longer. There's this amazing petition campaign that his mother leads that ends up resulting in a pardon for him in December of 1953. But during that time, he has befriended the local prosecutor, the man who prosecuted the case, and he starts reading law. And by the time he leaves the jail cell in early January of 1854, he is ready to start apprenticing. And by 1855, he will be admitted to the bar in Albemarle County by the very same judge who oversaw his unlawful shooting case.
Really? So, I mean, I almost feel like stories like that were more, not common, but doable back then, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, his story is both extraordinary and very commonplace. And the fact that there was an outlet, but again, he comes from not the wealthiest families in Albemarle County by any means, but... What
did his family do?
I mean, they're farmers. I mean, his father raises tobacco and cattle and sheep. And so as Albemarle County went, even though they're of the planter class because they had 20 plus enslaved people, in Albemarle County, there are enslavers that have hundreds of slaves. So they're not the top of the top.
Right, okay.
Within the hierarchy there, but they know enough people and they are tapped into. The lieutenant governor of Virginia is a friend of the family. And so those connections. So maybe it's not so different from today.
No, I guess no. Maybe you're right.
Connections.
Yeah, well, it's always about connections. It's true.
Yes, it is.
So, he starts in law and he kind of moves all over the place in Virginia.
He does.
Right? Now, when he becomes a lawyer, he also meets his wife at that time. When does he meet his wife?
So he meets his wife, Pauline Clark, in 1856 or 1857. She has family in the Albemarle County area. Her family has come to visit. They meet when he's in this little bitty hamlet of Albemarle County. Albemarle County is where Charlottesville is, and a little bitty hamlet called Howardsville. He meets her there. She's from Kentucky. Her father had been a gubernatorial candidate, a Democratic congressman and candidate for governor in Kentucky. Very tapped into the national Democratic scene. He's going to the political conventions in 1856 and otherwise. And so they get married in 1856. I found some new letters, letters that other historians that have written, other biographers have not used. I actually think he's living in Kentucky for 2 years with her family. And in 1858, they moved to Washington County, which is Bristol, Virginia. And Bristol is one of those cities that is both in Virginia and Tennessee, right there on the border, because it's so close to Kentucky, but it's also on the railroad line that will go to where his parents are living outside of Lynchburg.
Okay.
So it's kind of a central location. He's one of 3 lawyers in town in Bristol, and he can practice in both Virginia and Tennessee. He had actually gone to scout out where he might live in 1856. And there's a wonderful letter he writes his sister when he goes to Memphis and he sees the Mississippi River for the first time. And he writes back and says, this is a great place. The courts are in session all year long here. A lawyer could make a lot of good money. And so he's considering moving west for some time. But he and Pauline will settle in Bristol, Virginia in 1858. Seems to have a pretty good law practice there. When the secession crisis starts looming, when we have the election of 1860, he's a staunch Unionist, throws his hat behind Stephen Douglas, is one of 56 men in the county to vote. And keeping in mind that when you vote in the 19th century, people know how you vote. You show up at the poll and you have your ballot that is clearly marked for whichever candidate. And so all your neighbors know how you're voting. And this is true in the 1870s. This is, when we talk about Reconstruction and black voting, this is part of what's going on there too. So all his neighbors know that he's going against them. Staunch Unionist. He gets into a spat with a local shop owner who is very much a secessionist. And Mosby says, I will never turn my hand on my country. And then when he does, he has to go back and eat crow a bit. But he grew up riding horses. He certainly was familiar with horses, but he didn't even own a horse in 1860.
Right. You said he had to rent a horse to get to work?
A horse.
Or to go to court? Yeah.
Yes. To go to court in Abington, he would have to rent a horse. So when the cavalry, when the local mounted rifles are organizing, he has to borrow a horse to go join the cavalry or the militia group. And William Blackford writes a great deal about him and says, he's a slouchy rider. He is sloppy. He doesn't want to participate in drills. He only shows up half the time. So no one was saying, that man.
Right. It's going to be somebody.
He's going to be a colonel of the cavalry.
Is he how would you describe him personality wise at this point?
At this point, I think he's always soft-spoken.
Okay.
He's a small man. He's 5'7", which we know is average for Civil War soldiers, but he's very thin. He's 120 pounds, soaking wet. People comment on his piercing blue eyes, sandy blonde hair, but very frail looking. But he's very quiet, and he's not going to be the loud person. He's not going to be the person you pick out of the crowd.
Right.
As being
unassuming guy.
Right.
Yeah. But
I do think that we see from a very early age that he has this contrarian spirit. He has a fighting spirit. He comes to really relish fighting. And after the first battle of Manassas, he writes a letter home to Pauline, to his wife, and he talks about how he feels alive. That fighting is what's really, that he loves a soldier's life, and he didn't expect to. So, but very soft-spoken, and his personality is going to emerge over the course of the war, and we'll see a stronger and stronger persona. But he's not outspoken. He's not initially flamboyant, which by the time, and we can keep going through the chronology, but I'll say by the time he's leading his own command, by the spring of 63, when he and Stuart, Jeb Stuart is his idol. He has been scouting for Stuart in the spring of 62. He's part of the ride with around McClellan. He's in the lead, doing a lot of the scouting during that. But in 63, when he has his own command and he rides into Middleburg, William Blackford, who's there to witness this, says there's a complete transformation in the man that I saw ride into town. The man who was such a slouchy rider and so sloppy in his appearance is now the best dressed among them. And he's going to start to emulate Stuart. He's going to have that scarlet cloak that he wears. He's going to have an ostrich plume in his hat. So he's very much going to take on that cavalier mentality over the course of the war. But
it's funny how
very quiet.
It's funny how, like, it seems that a lot of guys who became larger than life in the Civil War prior to the war were like I'm thinking of Grant, right?
Yeah.
You know, just not really cutting it at much of anything.
Right.
And this war comes along, this horrible business of death, right? Comes along, and these guys thrive and they become somebody. They come into themselves.
Yes.
And I remember for the longest time in my life, I think we need a war because I feel like I'm never going to be anything. Like maybe I'm one of those guys, like who's gonna
that will spark it.
Yeah, like I'll finally be somebody worth noticing if there's a war. But I don't want to go to a war. So but it is very interesting that a lot of these guys, like you wouldn't think this of them until they have the opportunity to show it.
Right.
And maybe they didn't know that about themselves.
That's probably true. But I think there are probably equally as many people that the opposite was true, that those larger than life characters before the war just don't thrive and can't cope.
I'll bet that's true. Probably more so.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when you're larger than life and you're just going through normal life and you're one of those big, brash people,
right?
It's all bravado. And then when the metal meets the what is it? The rubber meets the road,
right?
Then you kind of shrink. Yeah.
And I do think that he finds he likes being outside. And that may seem like such a simple thing, but he finds that his health is better. Mm-hmm. Even his wartime letters. So I'm using as many contemporary sources as I possibly can rather than memoirs.
Right.
But even his wartime letters to his wife, he's talking about how he loves being he doesn't like picket duty, but he likes the quiet of the night out by himself on horseback and then just comes alive whenever there's a skirmish. Yeah. And so there's something visceral that taps into for him. And he does. He goes back and forth in the sense that he becomes adjutant for the 1st Virginia Cavalry under Grumble Jones when Grumble Jones loses that election in the spring of 62 with conscription, when soldiers then get to vote on their officers, and Jones is not very popular among his men.
Right.
And so he's not reelected, and it's Fitz-Lee. And Fitz-Lee and Mosby do not get along. They never get along. Fitz-Lee hates him. He's there's a great quote where, as adjutant, Mosby was supposed to rally the troops, and he says something about what is the horn, and Fitz-Lee goes after him and says, "Don't ever call it a horn. It's a bugle.
A bugle, okay.
Don't ever call it a horn." And Mosby, he doesn't use regulation saddles. He doesn't wear the uniform that he's supposed to wear, and Fitz-Lee just can stand none of it. So when Fitz-Lee is elected colonel, Mosby is out. And so he goes back into the ranks as a private, but Stuart taps him at that point saying he's a wonderful scout. And so he brings him to his headquarters as a courier and a scout.
Okay.
In the spring of 62.
I know we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
So that's a good preview of the war that you just gave them. Let's go back a bit.
Okay.
Who is Aaron Burton?
Oh, so Aaron Burton is an enslaved man that anyone who may have read Mosby's memoir may know him as the body servant, the valet who goes off to war with Mosby. He was enslaved. He was born probably around 1815, 1816 on the plantation owned by Mosby's paternal grandfather, so McLaurin, in Powhatan, Virginia. And when Mosby's grandfather died, he bequeathed Aaron, along with two other enslaved people, a woman named Caroline and her son Alfred, to Mosby's mother, Virginia. So these three enslaved people from her father's estate, very, very common for daughters of slaveholders to be given slaves by their father, where sons would get land. So he comes to Charlottesville, is living, laboring on the plantation at Tudor Grove in Charlottesville. And he's enslaved by Mosby's parents. When the war begins, Mosby owns two young children. He owns a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and we can postulate about what a 7-year-old and 9-year-old, what kind of labor these two young boys performed in in Pauline and John's household. But when he arrives in Richmond to muster in to what will be the 1st Virginia Cavalry, Mosby's mother, Virginia, decides that her son, like all other slaveholding sons, need to have a body servant in camp. So she and his father take Aaron to Mosby in Richmond in June of 1861.
How old's Aaron?
He's the same age as Mosby's mother. Let's do some math here. So he's
50s?
roughly 40.
40? Okay.
Roughly, 50. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, math. Yeah, not my forte. Sorry.
Mine either.
So somewhere around 50. So he's not
a spring chicken. Right.
Right.
So he's going into war
as a 50-year-old.
As a body servant.
Yes.
He must have been in great shape. Or maybe they didn't care.
Not sure that they cared, although, he's watched John grow up.
He knows
him well. Virginia is convinced that he will take care of her son. So we see that paternalistic idea there. And he does. John writes to Pauline and says, Aaron relieves me of a great deal of drudgery in camp. He's able to send him off. And this is something I think we maybe haven't thought enough about. But for those men who took enslaved body servants to camp, the enlisted men can't leave camp, but they can send their slaves off to gather food. And so he does. He sends him to get fresh vegetables and sends him to relatives' houses in Richmond to bring back food to camp. And so they have control over that labor in a way that an enlisted man doesn't have control over his own labor. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Aaron is with him throughout the war. Not only does Mosby write about him quite often, but other soldiers, other members of what will become the 43rd Virginia, the Rangers, talk about Aaron being part of the. He's not part of the command, but he's riding the extra. This is one of the things we've been reminiscing a lot about Pete Carmichael, and Pete and I had a lot of conversations, and Keith Bohannon too. I'm wondering, what does it look like when you are the 1st Virginia Cavalry and you have your company? Where are the body servants riding? Are they at the back?
Right. Are they in a separate unit of body servants? No, they couldn't be though.
He was certainly part of the mess. He cooked the food. Each night. So
this is something we don't see in movies, like a Confederate unit riding along and the officers have a body servant with them.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great question.
And not officers. He's a private. He's in the ranks.
Oh, that's right. Point. That's right. Yeah. So the privates are allowed to bring their body servants along.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. The movies really did not depict any. I'm thinking, what is it? Ride with the Devil. Did you ever see that?
I love that movie.
I love it too.
It's a great teaching movie.
It is a wonderful movie for many reasons. And it kind of never really gets the credit for some reason.
It has lots of problems and it still has the faithful slave trope. But
that's what I'm thinking of what's his name? Daniel. I believe his name, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of guys, for whatever reason, I don't know why they go, well, all the Jewel stuff. And I'm like, no, it's like one of the best parts of the movie is Jewel.
Jewel and Spider-Man.
And Spider-Man, yeah. Speederman. So anyway, but Ride with the Devil, they kind of touch on that with Daniel.
Touch on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
who's with a guerrilla unit.
Yeah, with a guerrilla unit. Yeah. But I was just, I'm thinking of that, and it's like, well, it's not like the fighting goes underway and Daniel hangs out in the back.
Right.
Right. Now it's a guerrilla unit, so it might be a little different. But like he's out there with them and he's fighting.
Right.
And I'm thinking, my God, like I'm trying to put myself in his shoes. And I'm like, I have no autonomy over my body.
Right.
I have to do what this guy tells me to do. And I'm not particularly keen on going into flying bullets, but my master is going. And I'm his body servant. Like, I have to go. That's going to be terrifying.
Well, in the Battle of First Manassas, so at that point, Mosby again is a private in the 1st Virginia Cavalry. And he talks about Aaron after the battle tending to other soldiers. So he is tending to wounded on the field. So it's not clear where he is exactly during the battle, but clearly he is close by, and there are plenty of other men in the
but see, that would make sense, like because he's in a regular unit at this point,
right?
So it makes sense that maybe they would have the body servants lag back as medics of some sort or another,
right? In an unofficial, right?
Because now you can free up a white man to get on the line.
Absolutely.
So, okay, one more question pre-war, and then we'll stay in the war. Okay. He's a Unionist at first.
He is.
So what happens where he goes from Unionist to secessionist to very effective guerrilla raider for those secessionists, and then later in life, back to a Unionist, essentially?
Yes, and I like how you phrase that of back to a Unionist. So he's not uncommon. I mean, the vast majority of Virginians vote against secession twice.
Right.
Before Fort Sumter, and then really before Lincoln calls for 75,000 troops. So he's not alone in that. I mean, the vast majority of Virginians are going to vote for Bell in 1860. What is striking to me is that the timing for him is not connected to Lincoln's call for troops after Fort Sumter. For him, he is infuriated with Lincoln's first inaugural address, and specifically parts that most of us probably don't read closely or don't pay attention to. He and others read parts of the address as saying that the Dred Scott decision won't be upheld. And the Dred Scott decision saying that enslavers could take their slaves wherever they wanted to, and also saying that Black people were not citizens and had no standing in court. So he and others take umbrage at that, and he joins 2 other men from Washington County writing what we might call an op-ed in Richmond papers calling for secession as of late March of 1861.
So because they thought that...
Because of the slavery issue.
Well, right, when you boil it down. But specifically that he thought that in the first inaugural, Lincoln was saying... What about the Dred Scott case?
Well, saying that it wouldn't be enforced.
Okay, gotcha.
And that essentially he sees the incoming Republican administration as not upholding the Constitution and Supreme Court decisions.
Is it the part, no person held to service or labor in one state under the laws thereof, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
So escaping into another shall, in consequence of any law or regulation therein, be discharged from such service or labor, but shall be delivered upon claim of the party to whom the service or labor may be due. So in other words, he's hearing Lincoln say that we're not going to uphold this decision. Okay.
Right.
So he now becomes a secessionist, and Virginia secedes. And who does he join?
So this is where the Washington Mounted Rifles, which is that local cavalry unit that he's been training with, that Grumble Jones, who's a local, is leading. They march off to Richmond, And in Richmond, they will be mustered into what becomes the 1st Virginia Cavalry.
And he's a private at this point.
He's a private.
Right, okay. So how does he get Stuart's attention?
So he is throughout the winter of 1861 into 1862, when Confederate and Union troops are there outside of Washington, D.C., he is part of the picket lines, and he goes on. I mean, the cavalry is acting. They're scouting in addition to acting as picket lines, and he goes on a handful. He tells some tales about he has to escort some women back to their homes inside the Union picket lines, and one of these women happens to be a friend of Stuart's, and he tells that story. I'm not sure how much of that to believe, but he ends up having to spend an evening. It's a snowy evening, and Joseph E. Johnston and Stuart are at this home, and he has to stay there for the night because of the weather. And that's when he first meets Stuart and Johnston. But he'll be sent on several scouting missions, and he's apparently an amazing scout. And through those expeditions, Stuart finally taps him.
What is it about him that makes him an amazing scout?
He seems to have an intuition.
Okay.
And he also manages to avoid
detection
and getting captured and gets away but he's bringing back very valuable information. And he does this on many occasions. I think in his memoirs, he exaggerates the extent to which his information is the most crucial information. But obviously, he's bringing back enough intelligence that it's making a difference. And Stuart is realizing that he, among others, and he's not the only one. Right. You know, there's a cadre of scouts that Stuart keeps at his headquarters.
So he's around Stuart a lot now.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? What would Mosby look back on and say, this is the moment when my career as, the Gray Ghost began, like where the legend begins?
He will point to different moments over the course of his life. He gets captured. He asks for troops to go off on his own in the summer of 62. Stuart's not sure he wants to give him troops, so he's going to send him to Jackson, who's still in the valley. And along the way, though, and part of what is really fascinating to me is how much of a love story this is. And I don't mean to be cheesy about it, but he truly loves his wife, and she is with his parents in just outside of Lynchburg. And he takes a train to go visit his wife, to sneak a visit to his wife when he's supposed to be going to join Jackson, and gets caught. And he gets sent to the old Capitol prison. He gets caught at Beaver Dam Station, gets sent to Washington to the old Capitol prison. His timing, as it often was amazing. And it's just when the Dix Hill cartel goes into effect, and he gets exchanged almost immediately. And he will say that while he is aboard the prisoner of exchange ship down near Fortress Monroe, he sees troops, Union troops, sailing into the Chesapeake Bay, and he knows that this is going to be the moment that Burnside is heading north. So this is before Second Manassas, okay. And so that McClellan is going to be leaving the peninsula and heading north. And so he does make his way. Once he gets released, he convinces enough people along the way that he needs to take this information to Lee, and he does. He takes this information about troop movements, whether or not that's the deciding factor in Lee's decision to send Longstreet and to send Jackson north in what will eventually be the Second Manassas campaign is debatable.
Okay.
But he does go talk to Lee and does share this information. And this is, this is after the ride around McClellan's army. He had been at the advance of that and had brought back information to Stuart throughout that ride around McClellan's army in the spring of 62. All of those moments he will point to as being pivotal, but the real moment that he will mark as the beginning of his partisan career is in late December of 1862, when Stuart will finally acquiesce and give him 9 men to use to probe the lines, the picket lines around Fairfax County. Leaves him in Middleburg, which is Loudoun County, and the Loudoun County, Fauquier area. Leaves him there with 9 men, and he's incredibly effective right away. And so he's, again, has 9 men initially. He will get a few more men locally. He will get men to join his group. He also will find local guides who will take him to in between the Union pickets and into the Union lines. And it's in March of 1863 that he will do the thing that really gets him the headlines, and that is he's able to get into Fairfax Courthouse and capture Union General Stoughton. And this makes headlines all over the place. And he captures him in his bed. And the northern papers are reporting about it. They don't quite know his name yet. They call him Mosby. They call him lots of different names. But this is the moment then that Lee will commission him first a captain, and then by the end of March, he's a major, with permission to organize enough men to be part of a battalion. And by June 10th, 1863, he has enough men to organize his first company. So Company A will organize in early June of 1863 of the 43rd Battalion, Virginia. So he doesn't have a regiment yet.
Okay.
He'll have a regiment by 1864.
Right.
But it's all of those moments along the way.
So when he captures the general, I feel like there's something that he says to him.
Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of hearsay in the newspapers about what he says, and I'm not quite sure that any of that is completely accurate. He asks, supposedly one of the things that he says is, "Have you heard of Colonel Mosby?" And the general response, and he said, well, I'm him, and get up and get ready.
So this is why because when you give me this timeline, right, he's not Colonel Mosby.
No.
He's really not anything.
Right.
This is the
no one really knows who he is.
Right. This puts him on the map.
Absolutely.
So he wouldn't say like what
this is part of the myth making, right?
Right.
Right. He's also not called the Gray Ghost during the war.
Is that true?
I can't find any evidence that anyone used that term. I think it comes about in the 20th century, and we really see it take off with the TV show in the 20th century. But I can find no newspaper reference or book reference from the 19th century calling him the Gray Ghost.
Amazing. Popular culture and what it does.
Isn't it weird what it does?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but I mean, what a great name though.
It is. Yeah.
So, okay, but now, he gets in the papers.
Okay.
He gets promoted because of this. What?
And Stuart issues a statement that he wants to be read to every regiment in the Army of Northern Virginia Cavalry that lauds the daring and audacity of
because he doesn't just get the general; he gets horses and other things.
He gets horses. He captures about 30 men, their horses.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah,
for
not bad.
9 guys or 10 guys,
and it's more than 9 at this point. It's about 20 because he's had men. But right, right.
You're getting into a general's bedroom,
right?
Like that's pretty good. So, okay, so he gets his promotion. He's getting in the paper. They're not sure what his name is yet. There is a point though where I don't know if this is right now or a little later, but he gets a photo made so that the papers have the right image, right?
That happens before.
Oh, before.
Yeah, he gets his photograph taken in Richmond in January or February of 1863 with the notion that people are going to want to know what he looks like. And
so he knows his star is rising.
He is very consciously shaping his public image, or at least hoping to do so, and acutely aware of having his name in newspapers. And even so, his name first gets in the newspapers after he was captured at Beaver Dam Station. when he then goes to the old Capitol prison and gets released and allegedly gives Lee the information about Burnside's troops moving. That's the first time his name gets in the newspapers. And he asks his mother and Pauline to make sure they buy up all the copies of the newspapers they can find so that he can save reference. So he absolutely relishes the celebrity that he's getting and constantly is saying, please make sure you get extra copies of the papers and please look for this, that, and the other that's been written about me.
Huh. So
he's not very humble.
No. I would imagine a lot of, you can't be in that. See, I think we forget sometimes that these guys are in very high testosterone areas and situations, and it's all guys.
It's all guys,
and there's no mom or wife to look down their nose at what we're doing, right?
So it just amps it up.
Yeah, of course, you're gonna love that stuff. Okay, so he's getting famous. Is he becoming a hero to Southerners now, or just Virginians?
I would say to Southerners, to Confederates, and certainly in Virginia, but his name is appearing in newspapers across the Confederacy by the spring of '63. People certainly know about the capture, of the general in bed. This is wartime legend. And his fame is only going to continue to rise. The Southern Illustrated News is going to print a wood sketch of him along with other so-called Confederate heroes.
Did they use his photograph?
They didn't, because he doesn't have the beard. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They use other photographs, but not the one that he had taken in the winter of '63.
How about in the North? Is he being noticed yet in the North?
He is. Okay. And they're finally starting to get his name right.
Okay.
Throughout the spring of '63. So he's continually, the small raids are continuing even as he's getting more and more men. Even before he has formally organized the 43rd Battalion, he is continuing to harass Union supply lines, the Orange and Alexandria Railroad. And certainly by the fall of 1863, his name is well known in the North because of these repeated captures of supply trains. He is a hindrance to Meade after the Gettysburg campaign. And we can talk about what he's doing during the Gettysburg campaign, but afterwards, it's a buffet of sorts of Union supply trains for him, because when Meade pulls back into Virginia, it is right in the heart of what will be called by this point Mosby's Confederacy, and he's picking off supply trains constantly. And so he's in Harper's Weekly. He's in Frank Leslie's Illustrated. They're printing sketches of him.
So, okay, Gettysburg. You mentioned Gettysburg. Now, he's not at Gettysburg.
He's not.
But he'll write a book about Gettysburg.
He will write at least 2, depending on how you're counting.
Now, Stuart's dead by this point. This is after the war when he writes these books, right?
Oh, yes.
So why is he writing them? Is it defense of Stuart or what? We're getting ahead of ourselves, but just real quick, like why?
The shorthand is he's going to constantly defend Stuart and what Stuart did or didn't do during the Gettysburg campaign.
Based on what?
Based on...
Like, where's he getting the information?
Oh, well, he is mining letters. He is, once the official records of the War of the Rebellion become available, the Gettysburg volume in particular, he's chomping at the bit to read that. He's constantly in a battle with Charles Marshall. He wants Lee's letter book that will talk about what Longstreet's spy, and specifically the date of when Longstreet's spy shows up. Is it on the 29th or is it on the 28th? And he is reading closely the order that Lee is giving of how much latitude does Stuart have. And he's trying to he's acting as a historian, although he conveniently, for anyone who's looking at his books, especially the one about Stuart in the Gettysburg campaign, he conveniently leaves out portions of the letter that don't reinforce. He's a lawyer.
Yeah, right.
He's a lawyer. First, he's just like Jubal Early. He knows how to
lie.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a family of lawyers, so I feel at liberty to say this. Lawyers pick and choose evidence to make their case. Historians are supposed to use all the evidence and follow the evidence, not use it to make the argument that they want to make. But Mosby, the advocate, is going to defend Stuart, and so he picks and chooses.
When he writes these books, is Stuart getting the blame for things at this point?
Yes.
Okay, so he's doing it as a defense. It's not right. Okay.
Right.
All right, now let's go back into the Civil War. Okay, so you mentioned that when Meade comes back into Virginia, he's coming into the heart of what has become Mosby's Confederacy.
Right.
Okay. Now, I know it might help people to have a map at this point when you explain this. So,
can you put up a map?
You know what? Actually, I can. Hold on a second. I might be able to actually Google Mosby's.
I was kidding, but...
No, I can do it. Mosby's Confederacy. Let's see. I'm going to do a map here. This is the wonder of modern technology. A trip through Mosby's Confederacy. Let me do it like this here.
Right. Now endorsed by a Pulitzer Prize winner. Do you like coffee?
I can't really drink coffee.
Why not? You don't like the taste of it?
No, caffeine.
Oh, I hear you. But you used to drink coffee.
I have drank coffee.
Too bad this wasn't around back in the day when you drank coffee.
Right.
Because you would have enjoyed this. This is our coffee. It's called Little Ground Top. It's roasted right here in Gettysburg at 82 Steinway Avenue, Bantam Roasters. You can go in anytime. You can get a bag whenever you want. Smell that, though, Edda. Isn't that wonderful?
It smells
It does
really
smell
good.
really nice,
Yes,
doesn't it?
It does.
You could just keep a bag of this in your living room just for the smell, right?
Yeah.
But you got to get it ground first. They could do it in whole bean or ground. You can get it ground if you want it for drip coffee or a French press, whatever. It's just fantastic. You could also buy it online if you, when you get back home to Pittsburgh and you decide, oh, my friend loves coffee. Oh, I just heard about this Little Ground Top. Well, you go to addressinggettysburg.com/cafe and you can order it there and get it, and you don't ever have to set foot in Gettysburg again. Not that you wouldn't want to, because and not that we don't want you to. We love having you here, so you come back as often as you want. But yeah, Little Ground Top. So 82 Steinway Avenue, Bantam Roasters here in Gettysburg, or addressinggettysburg.com/cafe.
At Digital History Pioneers Foundation, we are about grassroots history on digital platforms. That means we are about podcasters, documentarians, YouTubers, and even TikTokers. All of these creators are out there trying to share their love of history with the public. They don't need ideas, they need funding, both from viewers and corporate donors. DH Pioneers' initial funding focus is on the Civil War era, with a special emphasis on the Addressing Gettysburg podcast. So be a vital part of the unique content Addressing Gettysburg has in store by donating at dhpioneers.com and help bring your love of history to the people. Digital History Pioneers is an IRS Section 501c3 approved charitable corporation that makes any donation tax deductible to the fullest extent of the law.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Let's see if we can do it. Eric, go ahead. Pull it up on the screen there.
Yeah.
All right. So it's not the best, but this is short notice here. I'm trying, Eric. I can't make it bigger. There's no way to do that. I go open image, a new tab. Let's see. Nope, same thing.
So
okay, but go ahead.
Looking at Northern Virginia, the northern part of the triangle there, the uppermost counties, Loudoun County is going to be one that kind of sticks up rather pointed. That's where Leesburg is today for people that are familiar with. So the Potomac River is going to run right through there. Loudoun County, just south of it, Fauquier County. That's the heart of it, but also bleeding into Prince William County. So think of
where are we here? Over
Manassas.
Here. There we go, Manassas, right there.
Into Fairfax County.
Fairfax County. So this little 4-county clump here
Yeah, and stretching a little bit over the Blue Ridge, especially during 64 into Clark County.
Clark County, okay, up there.
A little bit into Warren County. But
a little bit down to Warren.
The heart of it is Fauquier and Loudoun.
Beautiful country, by the way.
Incredibly beautiful. Yeah. Horse country.
Oh, I know. We used to go to Gold Cup.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I look forward to that. That was so much fun.
Absolutely gorgeous area.
So that area. So now what is he doing? Like how do they operate?
Yes. Great question.
Because they're not wearing uniforms, carrying flags and blowing bugles, are they?
Okay.
Or horns?
Well, the debate about whether they're wearing uniforms, that's debatable. Sometimes they wear uniforms. Sometimes they don't. They do have Confederate uniforms that are issued to them, but there are plenty of accounts that they are wearing civilian clothing, but they're also wearing Union clothing. Right. But they do not drill. They do not ride in formation unless they're pretending to be Union troopers. They do not bivouac together. So there's no camps. They disperse. And he does this from the very beginning, from December 30th, 1862 on. His men are to disperse into the local community and find supporting families that are willing to host one or more rangers. And many of them have a usual place that they stay, a family that they stay with. Amanda Edmonds has a wonderful diary. She and her family host multiple rangers over the course of the 2 years. And she has lots of accounts of their comings and goings, of hiding them when Union troops do show up. But they disappear into the mountains and valleys, so it's tucked up there against the Blue Ridge Mountains and against the Bull Run, mountain range. So they are living with families. They are hiding out in the hollows and crevices of the Blue Ridge. They come together, and this is what's really fascinating to me, kind of the mechanics of all of this. They get a notice that there's going to be a raid, and so they are all to gather at some particular spot. And so never more than 300, but usually more like 50 men will get the call, and they will show up, and then they will be off on whatever raid or operation they're to go on. But this is why he later gets the term gray ghost, is they seem to disappear. They seem to vanish into thin air. They're really, really difficult to track down. There are a handful of times that Union troops almost catch Mosby. There's a great story of him going out the window. Pauline and the children do come and stay in various homes in and around Warrenton and Fauquier. But there's one particular night where Union troops have gotten intelligence. Some of this intelligence, by the way, coming from the enslaved population. And Mosby manages to get out of a window, climbing through a tree, and escapes.
Yeah.
Lots of those types of stories, those escapades. And that is what is just as fascinating for the Northern reading public as it is for Confederates, that, the atrocities aside, and those seem to really happen in the fall of 64, and we can talk about that, but his ability to vanish. Union troops Christopher Auger will spend from 63 through 65 trying to catch Mosby, and he never can. Mosby's injured several times. The Union troops are convinced that they will find him holed up in some home dying, and they never do. So, it really is the local supporting civilians who manage to whisk him away, to hide all of his men. They have, they take horses, and they have the best horses. Other generals are writing to him saying, hey, I lost my mount. I understand from Stuart that you can get me whatever I want. And so they have the best, fastest thoroughbreds in Virginia, if not the Confederacy. So there's a lot of legend wrapped around it, but there's a lot of, there's always a grain of truth in legends. And
sure.
And they are able to. Now, plenty of his men are captured. By spring of 65, there are at least 300 of his men sitting in northern prisoner of war camps. So his men are captured, just he manages to not be.
How does he develop that technique? You know, like you say they don't drill.
And he was against that when he hated that part when he was a private in the ranks. Yeah.
Well, who would like that?
Yeah.
But he, where does he develop the skills required to be a ghost and have your men be ghosts?
Well, a lot of it, I think, comes from the scouting and those, and that's what they are first and foremost. Right. So they are always scouts. They're always the first line of intelligence. And we need to reframe how we think about the role of partisan rangers. They weren't just disrupting supply lines. They were also the front line of gathering intelligence. He's especially good at that, and he sees the value of these lightning strike forces. He also claims that Francis Marion, Swamp Fox, was his hero, and he talks about reading about him as a child. Yeah. So he has that he's trying to emulate in many ways. But he also realizes how effective it's always in attack mode. His men, he never has them carrying sabers. He believes that those are useless weapons. Yeah. They're carrying 6-shot 44 caliber Colts, usually 2 pistols each man, and so they're supposed to charge in, whether this is a raid or ambush of some other type, whether it's a train that they're going to derail, and wait until they get incredibly close, and then they fire. And their methods are extremely effective and hard to guard against.
All right, so you mentioned 64.
Yes.
So now,
fall of 64.
Sheridan's in the valley.
Sheridan's in the valley in August.
And the shit starts to hit the fan.
It does.
What happens?
Mosby is going to, I mean, he's been active throughout the summer, throughout when Early is in the valley. He and Early, again, never get along. He volunteers to help Early out during the summer of 64 on numerous occasions, and Early just kind of shoos him off. But when Sheridan arrives in August of 64, Mosby is going to continue to go after the supply trains, and the supply trains that are coming from Harper's Ferry to Winchester in particular. Mid-August, he has a massive raid against Berryville wagon train. It's only a portion of the Union wagon train, but it's quite successful and makes a lot of news in the North. And this is going to just start a cycle of vengeance and retaliation. And there's official retaliation, there's official revenge, and then there's what's going on the side. What really starts happening is that the hard hand of war has come with Sheridan to the Valley. Part of this is part of Grant's program to wipe the Shenandoah Valley clean. This is part of the burning of the main valley in late September, early October. And so we're seeing all of it being ratcheted up. And when some Union cavalry start burning houses of Confederate sympathizers outside of Berryville, this will lead to, Mosby's not actually there, but his men under William Chapman are going to descend upon these Union troopers. They're from the 5th Michigan Cavalry, and they will yell "no quarter," and they will kill almost all of the Michigan troopers, even as they're surrendering. And so this ratcheting up of going after civilians, of targeting civilians, the trains that Mosby is derailing, General Halleck and Secretary Stanton agreed that they should put Confederate sympathizers on the trains, so that if Mosby's going to attack the trains, he's going to be attacking Confederate sympathizers, because he's killed several civilians that were on the trains along with Union soldiers. And so civilians are very much caught up in this. In Front Royal, there's a famous account where a Union soldier is apparently trying to surrender, and Mosby's men kill him. And by all accounts, including diaries of Confederate sympathizers, this is what happened. And so it wasn't Custer, although Mosby would always blame Custer. But the execution of 6 of Mosby's men was ordered, probably by Torbert. And in retaliation for that, so that happens in September, and Mosby holds a grudge, so he waits a bit, and finally he captures, again, he thinks it's Custer, enough of Custer's men, holds a lottery in November, and orders their execution as well. Several of the men escape, but an equal number of soldiers are to be executed for his men that were executed in Front Royal.
Why does Custer get the blame if it wasn't him?
I think there's a couple of reasons. People in Front Royal, the Confederate civilians, Custer's flamboyant. He's easy to recognize. They pick him out of the crowd, and they say that Custer was there. And Mosby, who was home injured at this point, doesn't know, but he takes the local word. But also because those Michigan cavalry have been so involved in some of the other incidents. Did
Custer carry out the order?
No, it doesn't seem so. No, it's
because I've always read it as it was a Custer and Mosby thing.
No, I mean Mosby thinks it's Custer,
right?
But it doesn't seem to be. No. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. That's interesting. So all right. So all this is going on now. Continue.
And it's tit for tat in some ways. There are lots of and we need to keep in mind that there's Mosby's men, and then there are other, what we might call true guerrilla forces that are also in the region. And sometimes it's not clear which men are technically in the 43rd and part of the partisan Rangers, and who are the highway robbers and marauders.
Right.
But it doesn't seem to matter, and it doesn't matter to Union troops. They see them all as part of Mosby's men.
They're all rebels.
Others that are hanged, and so this it just ratchets up after Mosby orders Custer's men hanged. He sends his note of retaliation to Sheridan, and this seems to quiet things for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then in late November into early December, Sheridan will send cavalry under Merritt into Loudoun and Fauquier, but primarily Loudoun County, just to get rid of all those civilians that are not to get rid of the civilians that are supporting him, but to burn and raze anything that might support Mosby's men. So barns, mills, crops, and it doesn't matter whether you are a Unionist or not. Loudoun County is full of Quakers, many of them with the last name Janney.
Oh, really?
I say Janney, but Janney, that are, abolitionist and anti-slavery and loyal to the Union. And it doesn't matter. They too will suffer the hard hand of war.
Yeah.
And, this is going to very much quiet things down for a bit. Mosby's going to be severely wounded in late December 21st. Of 64, will go back to his parents' home. He'll survive, go back to his parents' home outside of Lynchburg to recuperate for about 2 months. But that is enough to kind of quell this ever ratcheting up of retaliation. I mean, again, we've gone from soldier executions to the burning of mills and barns and crops throughout Loudoun and Fauquier County.
So he's wounded. That you said that quells everything for a bit.
It does. I mean, things had. I think the burning raid really does quiet things. Plus, Sheridan has clearly been successful in the Valley. In February, he's going to be called back to Petersburg, and the Early has likewise been defeated in the Valley. So the Confederate forces have been run out of the Valley. So Mosby is no longer important. Not that he was incredibly important in the 64 Valley campaign. He did disrupt supply trains, and he did prevent Sheridan from using all of the force that he might have used against Early. But once Early is run out of the Valley, that changes the dynamic as well. And as things come to center around Petersburg and Richmond, by the late winter of 65, Mosby is going to be alone in terms of Confederate troops in the Northern Virginia area. And he's now extended he's raised, he has a 2nd battalion, and there's now forces on the northern neck of Virginia. But he is the only real Confederate forces left in Northern Virginia.
These 2 battalions you're talking about, how many men are we talking in total?
In total, 800.
Okay. And he's completely independent of the Army of Northern Virginia?
So he is attached to the Army of Northern Virginia, but makes command decisions on his own, but checking in with Lee.
So he's cooperating.
Right. I mean, he reports to Lee, and he reports to Secretary Sutton.
Okay.
So, but he is not part of a corps. There's no one between him and Lee.
Okay.
After Stuart dies. So Stuart dies in May of 64. Before that, he reported to Stuart.
Okay.
But after that, and he's the only colonel in the Army of Northern Virginia that has that command structure with Lee.
And so obviously Lee sees value in what he does.
He does. And he expresses concern at various points and thinks that he's heard rumors that the men are making lots of money by selling their booty behind the lines. But he also repeatedly praises Mosby. He also worries about what type of men are coming into the command, that there are alleged deserters, that there are those who are trying to avoid conscription. Mosby is not supposed to have men in his ranks who it's supposed to go through the normal conscription process.
Okay.
And he is allowing men who should have been going into regular Army units. And there's a big push in the winter of 64 to get rid of the partisan units. And he and John McNeill are the only 2 that are allowed to continue to exist. They get rid of the Partisan Ranger Act in 64.
So
because he's effective.
Right. Okay. So then during the I guess the Appomattox campaign, and Lee's retreating until he ends up.
He's not retreating.
He's running like a scared. He's redeploying
toward Appomattox. Well, he's heading to Amelia Courthouse.
Trying to resupply, right?
Yeah.
And he can't. So,
because his men keep dropping out of the ranks.
What's Mosby doing during this period?
So he is still in the Northern Virginia area. He's back with his command.
So he's not down with the Army of Northern Virginia. Okay.
Not at all. Still, there are still raids that are going on across the Potomac River. In fact, one of his men, a young man, a 19-year-old named John McHugh, along with several others, goes across the Potomac, make an attack on a Maryland post office on April 4th of 1865. And McHugh will shoot a Union officer, and he will. There's a whole nother story. I write about this in the Not a Festschrift that Pete and Aaron Shandine and I did for Gary Gallagher. But the point is that there are still active raids going on in early April, and he is not with Lee. We'll get word on somewhere around April 10th or 11th. It's not quite clear that Lee has surrendered, and this is going to lead into a whole series of negotiations with Hancock, who is in command now that Sheridan is no longer in the Shenandoah Valley. It's Hancock, who's in command in Winchester, and a series of negotiations to try to get Mosby to capitulate his command, giving them the same terms that Lee was offered, or Lee's soldiers have been offered at Appomattox.
So in your book, Ends of War, which we've had you on to talk about this before, if you haven't gotten this, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to love it. I'm telling you. But you talk about how Mosby, what is it? He gets arrested doesn't he? Or what am I thinking of here? After the surrender.
That's later.
Okay, that's later.
Yes.
So at first at the surrender, like Mosby doesn't want to surrender. He disbands.
He disbands on April 21st. But I should back up and say, and as I'm writing this biography, I've of course dug even deeper into what Mosby is doing, on every single day during this. It's Halleck, who is in Washington, who's chief of staff at this point, who decides Mosby is not going to be allowed to be paroled. And so Halleck is going to telegraph Hancock, who's over in Winchester, and say, everyone who surrenders, every member of the Army of Northern Virginia who surrenders themselves of their own accord gets the same terms of parole that Grant offered at Appomattox, except Mosby. The guerrilla Mosby will not be allowed.
Just him or he and his men?
And that's what's really interesting. They don't say his men, just him, because he is so personally offensive. At the same time, there must have been queries in Richmond because the commanding officer in Richmond will telegraph Grant. And Grant is on his way from Appomattox he's making his way back to Burke Station and ultimately back to City Point on April 10th. And he gets a telegraph from Richmond that says, well, will Mosby be included? And so without consulting Halleck, Grant is going to decide that Mosby should be included.
Okay.
And so Halleck has already told Hancock, don't include him. And then that evening, Grant is going to telegraph back to Washington and say, I think Hancock should try this with Mosby too. And so they're kind of independently coming to different answers. So Hancock over in Winchester is like, what do I do? Well, he now has to follow what Grant says. And so he offers to send someone to meet with Mosby. Mosby will show up at a meeting in Clark County, and he will be offered the same terms. And he says, I'm not convinced that the war is over. I'm not convinced that Joe Johnston has surrendered. And the officer who's in charge, it's a general named Chapman of the negotiations, he says, okay, you can go on back and you can figure out whether Johnston has actually surrendered. I mean, in retrospect, General Chapman should have probably never let him leave.
Right.
Grant blows his lid when he finds out that Mosby's been allowed, that he's been there. I mean, they had a meal together and he's been allowed to walk away. So he has to come back several days later. Mosby agrees to come back several days later. And he's still not convinced that the war is over. But now the truce that they had the ceasefire, that the agreement not to go after Mosby's men is off the table. So he storms out, walks out, and refuses to surrender. This is on April 20th. But again, the Union officer, and this time Hancock did not send a general. And think about that, a general meeting with a colonel.
Right.
He sends a staff officer the second time. But Mosby storms out again, but he knows the writing is on the wall. And so the very next day, April 21st, he gathers his command in Salem, Virginia, and tells them, he doesn't read it. It's just like with Lee's farewell address. He has his subordinate officers read a farewell address that he's penned to his men. And the very next day, about 300 of them make their way to Winchester under his Lieutenant Colonel William Chapman. They go to Winchester and surrender themselves. Mosby, however, has hightailed it along with about 5 other men, including his brother and most likely Aaron Burton, making their way to Richmond, where he's going to try to find out what's left of the Confederate government. He gets to Richmond, learns that Johnston has in fact capitulated, but now, because he refused to surrender, there's a $2,500 price tag on his head. And so he's got to figure out what to do. So he knows he can't go back to his family. His wife is with his parents just north of Lynchburg in Amherst County. In fact, William Chapman, who's his second in command, has been questioned by Hancock. Hancock brings him back to Winchester even after he's been paroled and said, where is Mosby? And Chapman volunteers that Pauline, is in or around Lynchburg. And so there are messages that say, find her. And if we can find her, we can probably bait him into coming.
Yeah.
He's, meanwhile, hiding out somewhere in the mountains of Virginia down near Nelson County at his uncle's house. Long story short, in mid-May, he decides maybe he needs Lee's help. So he sends a message by one of his men, by Ben Palmer, to Lee to find out whether he will, in fact, be paroled. Now, the price tag on his head is $5,000 because he's refused to surrender. And, of course, this just keeps amping up and up. Again, he's moving back and forth. He goes in to surrender himself. He gets word that he will be allowed to be paroled. He and his brother go into Lynchburg, and then orders come that he's going to be arrested. And so he flees out of Lynchburg once more. Union troops show up at his parents' house looking for him. He hides out in the mountains. And then finally, mid-June, he gets word that Halleck and others are going to allow for his parole. So he goes to Lynchburg, gets his parole, and as far as I can tell, he is covered by President Johnson's amnesty proclamation by that point.
So, but what? Just because he was such a horrendous scourge, burr in the hide of the Union, that's why he was getting all this special attention. About, in other words, like they wanted, he wasn't getting the same treatment as everybody else. Like, is that why? Just because of that, or was there something more to it?
Well, there's a real fear among Grant and Sherman and others that guerrilla warfare could continue.
Oh yeah, sure.
And so he's been unbelievably successful. And for 2 years, they've been trying to capture him, and he's managed to evade them all along. So the notoriety, the notorious behavior, that combined with the real fear that Grant, this is the whole reason that Grant is willing to parole soldiers from the Army in Northern Virginia, because he wants the war over. And if you're paroled, a paroled soldier is safer than a guerrilla that people have taken to the mountains. And so his reputation, his evasiveness, all of this combined with the real fear, and it doesn't happen, so we tend to discount it. But there was a legitimate fear among Grant and Sherman and others that even if the regular army surrendered, that it could turn into a guerrilla warfare. And keep in mind, Grant and Sherman both started their war in the Western Theater in places like Missouri, where that had been such an endemic problem.
Right.
And so again, it doesn't happen, so we discount that it could have, but that is part of the animating factor that is driving them.
Now, there's a lot that you got into in the lecture last night, and I know you have to go somewhere at 1, so I don't want to get into everything. I also want people to buy the book when you put it out. Do you have a title for the book yet? Working title, at least?
My working title is Rebel Among Rebel.
Rebel? Oh, I like that. So that's what I want to skip to. Okay. So war, you got to leave something for them to read, right?
Yeah.
So we're not going to get into every detail of his life, but what I'm most interested in, and we touched on it before, so we might as well conclude with this part, is he's a Unionist, he's a secessionist, and he goes back to it. He's a reformed Unionist.
He is.
And by the end of his life.
He is.
And not only is he a reformed Unionist, but he is like going at it with big lost causers.
Absolutely.
Okay. And there's some great stuff here that you talked about. I don't know if I wrote it down or not. Okay. So there's like 4 or 5-ish things that he does with the lost cause, right? He refused to deny slavery was the cause of the war.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. I love this because the quotes that you put up, I don't know if you remember them well enough to recite them for us now, but the quotes that you put up were pretty, I read them to be kind of snarky.
Oh.
Right? Like
he has a nice snarky edge.
He's got a great snark.
Yeah.
And I love snark, except when it's directed at me. But I love to see snark employed, and he is using it, and as much like we do today against lost causers. it's like he's basically like, I'm sorry, I thought everything we talked about, the only thing we talked about was slavery.
Right.
And like all of a sudden now everything's totally different because we love. And I thought that was so fascinating. But he does contribute to the faithful servant thing. So let's kind of wrap up the story with Aaron while we're in this phase of his life. What's he doing with Aaron while this is going on? Aaron's free now.
Yes.
Living in Boston?
So he lives in Charlottesville for the great majority of his life. And then after his wife dies in the late 1880s, he moves to Brooklyn.
Oh, Brooklyn.
He has 2 daughters that live in Brooklyn, and he appears to go back and forth, living with both of them.
Okay.
Not uncommon. And Mosby is sending him money, sends him $10 here and there, even when Mosby is out in San Francisco.
Okay.
He's sending money. And then there will be a piece that is published in newspapers across the country, syndicated, about Aaron Burton, Mosby's loyal servant. And so Burton gets a little bit of fame. I mean, that's how he's known. He's written about in several of the memoirs of Mosby's men for, being this loyal servant. And so it's not that he makes his living from this, but it certainly, he doesn't, he gives interviews. Burton gives interviews and contributes to this notion of a faithful body servant as well.
Second thing he did is he didn't see the point of putting up Confederate monuments. He said it was a waste of time and money.
Yes.
But he was, of course, in the minority on this. I remember years, it had to be during 2020, might have been 21. Not this Eric, but Eric, the producer, the first, and I were out at the Virginia Memorial meeting a couple of guys to do an episode out there. We're just going to record outside because it was nice out. Get the birds chirping in the background. And the Confederate monuments were being taken down in Richmond and all over the place at the time. And while we're sitting there, now this was 2020 because this was the day after the Beer Belly Brigade left when they came to guard the monuments. Mm-hmm. So this was on a Monday. So they all left Sunday, and this is Monday. And we're sitting there, and we're right sitting on the grass, right off the parking lot around the Virginia Memorial. And this guy pulls up, gets out of his car, and he does like the faux tough guy walk, looking around and everything. He's got a gun on his hip, and he goes, "Hey guys, excuse me, you see anything suspicious? Any kind of people acting weird around here?" And Eric goes, without missing a beat, he goes, "Other than you, no."
Ooh, dangerous.
And the guy's like, "Oh, okay." And he gets back in his car and he goes away. So that gets us talking about the monuments. And this is the first time, prior to that, I never really got in any discussions about monuments. Should they come down? Should they go up? Because it wasn't really that big of a thing. But that year it was a big thing. Yeah. And so we're talking, and Eric, veteran, and combat veteran, and he had a great point, and it immediately changed my way of looking at those things. He said, "I don't think they should have gone up in the first place," and that was the first time I ever heard anybody say that. And then since then, I've learned, there were people that thought that back then. Mosby, interestingly enough, I did not know this until last night, was one of them. Mm-hmm. And
except for Stuart. He was all for the Stuart monument.
Yeah, he must have seen him naked or something. I don't know why he was so in love with Stuart.
He did have an adulation for him.
Yeah, I guess. Well, he made him, right?
Yeah.
He gave him legend. Like he helped the legend be born, I guess. I don't know.
So.
But no, so I think that's interesting that he was one of those people who thought that, and clearly he would be in the minority then, I would imagine, more so than now.
He also called them political statements, and he said, I see why Northerners would take offense.
Yes.
At these.
Yes, and that's what they are. I mean, when they were being put up during the civil rights movement, that's what they were.
They're always political statements.
They tell you more about the people who put them up than the people there too.
You got it. Yep.
Number 3, he avoided veterans reunions, even of his own unit.
He went to one. He went to the very first one, and that was it. He also thought those were political conventions.
Yeah.
And I love that I love when people in the past use the words that we want them to. When they use the quotes that we need them to. And he talked about them being bloody shirt campaigns. And we often talk about the Republican Party waving the bloody shirt, but they all do, right?
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
Vote as you fought. And he calls them out. And he says in other places, you know, I would love to go and reminisce with my men. I'm happy to. And he does. He goes to the battlefield on occasion when he does come back to visit his, several of his children live in Warrenton their entire lives. And he's buried there, by the way. But he saw no point in the political part and the statement part that veterans reunions. Although he went to Union veteran reunions,
Right, and he would give speeches at them, right?
Yeah.
It's I without naming parties or people, I've seen interviews with people who were once one party and in recent years were, in a pretty vile way, rejected by their party because they dared question the dogma or whatever, and found the opposite party welcomed them with open arms, and now they've switched parties.
Yes.
And it's kind of,
There's
that's
a lot of that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what he went through, right? All he did was, say, well, maybe we shouldn't, and they're like, wah, and then he goes, oh, well, I'm just going to go to the other side because they're nicer to me. Okay, another thing he did, number 4, took on Robert E. Lee.
He did.
It looks like I shall be at war forever.
Yes, I love that quote.
Yes, that's a great quote.
That could be the title of the book for all of the ways that he is
always fighting. That is a good quote,
Yeah.
actually, for the title. You should consider that.
I will.
And then finally, he accused lost causers of undermining national unity. And I think that's the whole point. These monuments, not so much the veterans reunions, but certainly the daughters, that all undermines the reconciliation,
Keeps the animosity alive.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And I think we see this today even where, there's one group of people that are always wanting to remind us of things that happened in generations that aren't even alive today, to keep the resentment, to keep the anger going, and to keep, people buying their books. And it is so antithetical to unity and healing and moving on.
Right.
So yeah, I love him in the Lost Cause period because he says everything that we all continue to say today.
And
he's
this is why
absolutely
we
right.
should reevaluate. Again, I'm not saying he needs to be put up on a pedestal, but to think about the people who did push back and challenge and what's at stake.
Yeah.
When you push back, do you get ostracized, labeled, shoved out of the club for speaking truth? The way we talk about our past matters.
Yeah.
It has social and political and religious and cultural implications. And yeah.
If the club starts lying about why it became a club in the first place, and I'm a member of the club and I go, that's not why we started the club. And then they start getting mad at me. I'm not the problem. You left me. And so, you may make problems for me, but I'm right.
Right.
And so I admire people like him who are willing to say, the guy literally bled. I think he even said, he goes, I shed my blood and offered
the best years of my life.
The best years of my life to this cause. So, I think if anybody can change their mind, it's a guy like that who's done that. And I know plenty of people who, look at how many Vietnam vets do you know that hate this country now because of their experience in Vietnam, right? Because their government, or at least they hate their government.
Right.
And so you change your mind. Experience changes you. And what worries me are the people who never change their mind, no matter what experience.
Yes. I get really frustrated whether we're talking about contemporary people or we're talking about Lincoln and other historical actors. Shouldn't we want people to change their position?
That's my point.
Shouldn't we want them to grow?
It shows growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maturity. I'll never change my mind about anything, but everybody else should.
Maturity.
Exactly. And I'll never be mature. There's so much more. This is a full biography on him, right?
It's going to be.
And it's going to be about like this thick. How big are we going?
I'm hoping.
This isn't going to be one of those things that's like, this is the manuscript and then they boil it down to 150 pages.
No,
this is going to be a real book.
It's a real book.
Not that you haven't written a real book before, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it won't be one of those fake books.
Right. Not one of those phony books that just have a nice cover.
No, it's a cradle to grave biography. And the other part that I didn't talk about last night, but he lives from 1833 to 1916, and we can see this arc of American history.
He's the Forrest Gump of...
I have used that, and then I decided he's the Roy Kent.
The who?
Roy Kent. He's here, he's there. You're not a Ted Lasso fan?
Oh, I haven't gotten into that yet. Sorry. I'll get there. It's on my list.
He's here, he's there, he's every blanking where.
Okay. It'll make fun of me when I get into the show.
Okay.
Or it'll make fun of me. It'll make sense to me. It'll be funny to me is what I was also thinking. So let's see. David has a question here. He says, most unexpected thing you learned about Mosby researching this book?
Oh, there's so many. That he was constantly, well, the most unexpected is just a trivia type thing. And that is he was in a silent film in 1910.
Oh, that's right. So, I forgot about that. What was the film?
All Is Fair in Love and War.
Okay.
Yeah. And very original title. He plays himself.
Old himself?
Old himself. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the trivia part that was a really fun find. I think otherwise it's seeing this combatant because he is a reformer. We won't get into, but I will offer a teaser of he works for the government from 1878 until 1909. Yeah. 1909. And in all of those ways, he's a reformer and trying to clean up various aspects of bureaucracy.
He's really fascinating, though. Like a guy that was such a pain in the ass to the United States.
Then turns around as one of its biggest
helpers. Yeah. Like it's amazing.
I think the other part that I don't know whether it's surprising, but I am also, I'm a social historian at heart, and I am fascinated by the relationships in his life, the relationship with Aaron Burton. And Aaron I'm going to weave him through the story as much as possible with his mother, Virginia, with Pauline and his daughters, with comrades. I'm immensely interested in the connections that people make and how that shapes their own view of themselves and their own view of life. So I'm having a lot of fun pulling at those threads.
Well, I'm not alone because there's people in the comments saying this. There was a lot of us looking forward to this book. You've been working on it like 2 years now, right?
2 years.
Yeah. So we should be getting there.
I hope to have a finished manuscript next summer, but then there's the whole process of...
It's going to take forever.
I know.
Why don't you just do it as a podcast?
Daggone historians. I should.
Well, forget that. Just forget the book.
Okay.
You'll make more money on the podcast.
Will I?
Well, maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, you would.
Okay.
Yeah. Not anybody. You would make more money. Laughing. Not everybody would. Eric, do you have any questions or anything back there?
Well, actually, Rob had a good one in the comments.
Can you put the microphone to your mouth? Why can't people... You had this on.
But Rob has a good one in the comments. He said, "Is it known how many Union resources were dedicated to counter capture or kill Mosby?"
That could be figured up in a rough sort of way.
You're not a math person.
Yeah, apparently I can't do math. I can't even do basic subtraction for dates. There are estimates, especially during the 64 Valley campaign or Sheridan's portion, of how many troops he had to send to guard wagon trains. We could do the number crunching. I think it's fair to say that Mosby does exactly what he's supposed to do in terms of disrupting supply lines, of making them divert resources, men to guard wagon trains. The one thing, though, that Lee complained about, especially in the fall of 63, was that the Orange and Alexandria was a much more important supply route than than just the turnpikes.
Right.
And he wanted Mosby focusing more on the railroads than the plundering of, but they're getting so much good stuff off of those wagon trains.
Canned oysters.
So it could be figured up in a rough sort of way. I have not done so.
So going along with that, I do have one myself.
Go ahead.
Was there ever any discussion or talk of, as Lee's army is, we'll say, falling apart from Petersburg, even during when they're in Petersburg, and they've so many desertions that they're having all the issues they're having, and then especially once they leave Petersburg and are moving to Appomattox, was there ever any talk about pulling Mosby? And I guess he didn't really have that many troops left at that time, but were they ever thought about bringing him in with the regular units, or was it because he was doing enough there to draw attention away that there's more value in that?
So not in April of 65, if we're looking at when Lee pulls out of Petersburg and Richmond. It's too late at that point. But a couple of things. One is that in late November, early December of 64, Fitz Lee, who's, of course, nemesis by this point, he is leading a charge to check the rosters of the 43rd because he's convinced that Mosby is allowing in all sorts of deserters and, again, those men that are avoiding conscription. And he makes a good case to this effect that, it's much more attractive to be in Mosby's Rangers than it is to be in the trenches of Petersburg at this point.
Yeah.
And so there's a fear that he is taking men but there's so few men left. I mean, you have the young boys that are turning 18 or 17 at this point, but resources have been tapped out. But there is a communication between Lee and Mosby in March of 65, essentially saying you're the last line of defense in the Northern Virginia, Northern Neck region. And so there's no talk about pulling Mosby back to be with regular troops because he's it. And what he's doing is not combat in the same sort of way. It's attacking supply lines is the main point.
Yeah.
Of the partisans in scouting and information.
I'm mostly looking forward to this because, like I said, since I was a boy, Mosby has been around every time I would go visit my family, and it was just you see Mosby everywhere. Mosby lawnmower sales, Mosby this, that, and the other thing. You even mentioned during the war, he was so famous in the area, people named their children Mosby and their dogs Mosby. Yeah. And so this is going to be interesting to read. Also, he's just a fascinating guy. And just the few times that we've talked about, because we talked about him before when you started doing this at CWI. So I remember then going, this is going to be really good because I didn't know all the stuff about him. And then now that we've got more detail, I'm really excited about it. A lot of people enjoyed your lecture last night. We enjoyed it for sure.
Thank you.
Carrie, you are a class act. Thank you very much for coming on here.
Thank you.
I really appreciate
Always
it.
Fun.
You legitimized the show, so thank you. You really
did. To do my part.
And thank everybody at home for watching, and patrons, thank you for your continued support. Eric, thank you for your help in the back there today. And you want to say you're welcome?
You are welcome.
Thank you, Eric.
That took a lot.
Got to teach him his manners. That's it, folks. Have a good one.
Our hearts so stout have got us famed, for soon 'tis known from whence we came. Wherever we go, they dread the name of Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa or drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail, no man for debt shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory. Instead of spa or drink down ale and pay the reckoning on the nail, no man for debt shall go to jail from Gary Owen in glory.
Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, we have a lot more content for you over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. Also, you can make a tax-deductible donation to help support more videos like this at dhpioneers.com.